The movie opens in a mental hospital, where a group of staff members is gathered in the main office. The group includes security personnel, Jeeves, Noob, Stephanie, Mel, and 2 nurses, Hickey and Fiona. Today is their last day of work, as the government has decided to shut the place down. A cleaner named Andy mentions that he's worked here for 30 years and will surely miss the place. However, most younger employees are happy because they dislike this place, and are moving on to better opportunities. But the old security guard Jeeves says he's looking forward to his retirement, as he's done with working his entire life. In another room, we see a psychiatrist named Ashley, and her boyfriend Mason, who is the chief security guard. She suggests that they should reveal their relationship since the place is closing, but Mason responds that everyone knows about it anyway, which leaves Ashley surprised. Soon, Mason receives a radio call from an old woman named Maisie, who works as a superintendent in the facility. She immediately summons him to the office, and instructs him to bring Ashley as well. Maisie reveals that they are expecting a new prisoner tonight, whom Ashley is required to evaluate. This order came directly from the state, as they need to decide how to handle the prisoner's insanity plea. Ashley is annoyed, because she doesn't have enough resources to conduct an accurate evaluation. But there's no time to hesitate, and later the security team is seen waiting outside the elevator for the new patient to arrive. The doors soon open, revealing 2 officials, and a huge man wearing a mask over his head. Mason instructs his team to take the patient to his accommodation, while he handles the paperwork. One of the officers then warns Mason not to remove the patient's mask under any circumstances, and don't ask why. Later, Hickey arrives at Ashley's office and hands her the file of the new patient. After the nurse leaves, Ashley opens the document, and reads something that leaves her in shock. Maisie soon enters the room and asks what's wrong and why she looks so tense. Ashley responds that the patient from tonight has shockingly murdered 5 women. On the other hand, we see the security team escorting the new patient to his cell. They pass by Clara, a mentally disturbed woman who is now the hospital's only remaining patient. After securing the patient in his cell, Mel heads to the monitoring room to observe the CCTV cameras. She soon notices the new guy breaking things in his room, and appearing to have a mental breakdown. Elsewhere, Ashley informs Mason that she can't review this patient, but doesn't provide any valid reason. Mason receives a call from Mel, who says that the new guy is losing his composure, so he quickly sends someone to investigate and leaves. Shortly after, Noob arrives to check on the patient. He then presses a button and releases an annoying sound to torture the guy, and watches him with amusement. Afterward, Noob heads into one of the toilet stalls to relieve himself. Suddenly, someone enters the bathroom, and turns on all the faucets, before blocking the sinks with tissue papers, which causes the loud sounds of running water. And before Noob can figure out what's happening, the new patient gives Noob like 100 brutal punches until the poor guy stops moving. In the control room, Mel soon notices that the new guy has somehow escaped from his cell, so she immediately announces over the speakers that the deranged patient is out of confinement. This leaves all the employees visibly shaken and confused, while the killer also hears the announcement. Mason then decides to prepare the building for lockdown, and activates a system that seals all doors and windows so the patient cannot escape. Meanwhile, Ashley is in her office with Maisie and Andy, and they have locked themselves in for safety. Elsewhere, Mel checks all the CCTV cameras, but is unable to locate the patient, which leaves her increasingly worried. Mason instructs her to contact the police, and advises her to lock herself in as well. The scene then cuts to a patrol car driving down the street with 2 officers inside, who receive an urgent call about an emergency at the mental hospital, and they are instructed to investigate. In the next scene, Mason reaches the meeting room, and locks himself in with the rest of the employees. He tries calling Noob, but he doesn't respond, and the group begins to fear the worst. Maisie then informs Mason that they will be staying in Ashley's office. All of a sudden, the killer turns off the electricity, but the backup generator kicks in and the lights come back on. Following this, the employees mention that although they have locked themselves in, there is still Clara in her cell, whose life could be in danger. They suggest waiting for the police to come, but Stephanie mocks them for being cowardly. Here, Mel suddenly informs Mason that the deranged patient has been covering all of the cameras with black spray paint, to ensure that he can't be seen. Worried, Mason urges Mel to come to the meeting room and join them for safety. The latter obliges, and carefully descends the emergency stairs. But then, she is confronted by the killer. Her screams are heard by the team through the walkie-talkie, but they are helpless to do anything, and Mel ends up being brutally murdered. Realizing the gravity of the situation, Jeeves suggests they make a discreet exit, and let the cops handle it. But Stephanie is confident that they can handle one man and suggests attacking him together, but Fiona doesn't agree with this. Mason then contacts Ashley to ask about the patient, and what's written in his file. She responds that his name is Paul Atkins, and he's accused of killing 5 women in cold blood. The guy also lost his wife and children, who died in a hit-and-run accident. Upon hearing all this, Mason realizes that they can't just sit around and need to find the killer. He then divides the group into 3 groups to begin their search around the facility. Elsewhere, Maisie asks Ashley why she looks so tense, and the latter reveals that it's for a personal reason, which she will share someday. Maisie then comments that although Paul has done some monstrous things, she feels empathy for him because he lost his family in the accident. This is because Maisie herself lost her family in a hit-and-run accident. Her husband died instantly, and her traumatized daughter spent 10 years in this facility, before she also passed away. In another scene, we see Jeeves and Hickey walking down the corridor in search of Paul. Jeeves reveals that in his entire career of working here, he has never encountered anything like this before. He then asks Hickey to check one of the rooms alone, and the young guy has no choice but to oblige. Hickey uses his keycard to enter inside, and is relieved to find the room empty. But then, the door is locked from inside, leaving Jeeves outside, and the psycho proceeds to kill Hickey. After successfully murdering Hickey, Paul exits the room and corners Jeeves, so the old man closes his eyes and begs God for forgiveness. But moments later, he surprisingly finds the killer gone and breathes a sigh of relief. Meanwhile, in Ashley's office, she is worried that Paul will find his way in. Ashley then asks Maisie what she would do if she found the person who killed her family, but the question leaves Maisie bewildered. Elsewhere, we see Fiona and Stephanie searching for Paul. They are gossiping, when suddenly, Paul sneaks up on them, and drives a meat cleaver into Stephanie's head. A terrified Fiona manages to run away from the scene, while being chased by the psycho. She eventually arrives at the garage, but the door is closed due to the lockdown. Unfortunately, Paul soon arrives, prompting Fiona to hide behind a car. It seems like she has succeeded in evading him, but the killer eventually finds her. He uses a trash bag to suffocate her to death. On the other hand, 2 officers arrive at the hospital in response to the emergency call earlier. They inspect the area, and suspect that someone has pranked them because the place appears to be empty and uninhabited. This is due to the lockdown procedure, which has barricaded all entry and exit points to the building, which they're unaware of. The officers simply inform their superior that they found nothing unusual, and leave to resume their patrol duties. The scene then cuts to Ashley, who is half asleep, and having nightmares of Paul strangling her. A worried Maisie thus wakes her up, and reveals that she was screaming and sweating in her sleep. Here, Ashley once again asks Maisie what she would do if she found the person who killed her family. The old woman responds firmly that she would seek justice, and kill the perpetrator who caused her so much pain. In the next scene, we see Jeeves, Andy, and Mason arriving at the garage, and Jeeves wonders why the police haven't arrived yet. They then try to contact Stephanie on the walkie-talkie, but receive no answer. They also grow worried about Clara, and decide to check on her, but Mason leaves to attend to another task and assigns the responsibility to the other 2. But unbeknownst to them, Fiona's mutilated head is just inside the trash can there. Shortly after, Jeeves and Andy go to Clara's cell and are relieved to find her safe. They decide to take her to the office, but Andy is startled when he notices Paul in the distance. He then makes the unexpected decision to lock Jeeves and Clara in the cell to keep them safe. Jeeves desperately attempts to open the cell door, but Paul proceeds to brutally kill Andy outside. On the other hand, Mason enters Ashley's office. He informs them that they can't find Paul, and suggests calling the cops again. But Ashley explains that it doesn't matter because the facility is designed to ensure that once lockdown is activated, no one can get in or out. Mason then contacts Jeeves, who delivers the heartbreaking news about Andy's death. He also mentions that he's stuck in the cell with Clara, and asks for the cell door to be unlocked. After the call, Jeeves begins to grow increasingly tense, so he takes some medication to calm himself. Meanwhile, Mason talks about Paul, and learns that the driver who killed his family had run off. Mason believes that something or someone in the facility must have triggered Paul, causing him to go on such a violent rampage. Next, Mason uses the speakers to address Paul, saying he knows about his family and feels sorry for what happened. He tells Paul that he needs to meet him for a conversation, and assures him that he has no intention of hurting him. Mason then heads downstairs, where it seems like Paul wants to cooperate, but the idiot Maisie abruptly asks Mason via walkie-talkie if he trapped the killer. This enrages Paul, so a terrified Mason flees with the killer in pursuit. Fortunately, Mason manages to deceive him, and flees from his sight. We then return to Ashley, who approaches Maisie and reveals a shocking truth. It turns out she was the one who accidentally killed Paul's family and drove away. This leaves Maisie flabbergasted, as she didn't know that Ashley was the reason all these employees died. The psychiatrist says she didn't mean for any of this to happen. She begs Maisie not to tell anyone, but the old lady wonders how Ashley can sleep at night after everything that has happened. Ashley continues apologizing, so Maisie says it's not her she should apologize to, but to Paul and the families of all those people who died tonight. The scene then cuts to Jeeves, who has now been released from the cell and is in the elevator. He is so disturbed by the events of the night that he begins to suffer a heart attack. Jeeves tries to take his medication, but unfortunately, he's too weak and eventually passes away. Elsewhere, we see a mentally disturbed Clara dancing in the corridors, unconcerned about the chaos around her. In another scene, Maisie calls Mason, and claims she has something important to tell him. But he asks her to take the facility out of lockdown, and then put it back under his command. Ashley tries to stop Maisie, saying it's her job to handle it, but the old woman doesn't care and insists that either she tell Mason the truth herself, or she will. Maisie then goes to the control room, and presses a button to temporarily lift the facility's lockdown. Elsewhere, Mason arrives at one of the cells, quickly followed by Paul, and he orders Maisie to reactivate the lockdown. He actually plans to sacrifice himself and trap Paul in a room, so that he is unable to commit any more murders. But then, Ashley arrives at the cell and uses her keycard to enter. She speaks to Paul, saying she knows his wife's name is Sarah, finally revealing that she was the one who hit and ran over Paul's family. Hearing this, Paul approaches to attack her but is stopped by Mason, so the killer relentlessly stabs him until he dies. He then leaves the room without hurting Ashley, because he wants her to live with the consequences of her actions. In the final scene, Maisie lifts the lockdown, and opens the garage door. Suddenly, Paul approaches her, and she reminds him that she promised to get his work done. In a shocking twist, we find out that Maisie was actually helping Paul all along in his violent rampage. She then asks him to hand her a keycard and a sharp object, which he used to open his cell door, and move freely throughout the facility.